During the medium-term budget policy statement, the Finance Minister Nhlanhla Nene was speaking about policy uncertainty created by various voices in government and the ANC, at times in conflict. Now, the ANC Treasurer General, Dr. Zweli Mkhize, is emphasising the same point. This is The Moneymakers. I'm Bruce Whitfield. And tonight we've got the ANC Treasurer General to talk about how we get business and government together to try and unblock the clogs that are developing in the South African business and government sectors. Do we have a problem, Zweli Mkhize, with the way in which policy certainty is conveyed?
I think there are a few issues which I think we need to deal with. The first one is how the ANC goes about to develop policy. We have our structures that discuss and consult and put papers out, get feedback, and then go through different levels of discussions and get to a policy conference, make recommendation, and a conference will adopt it. That's when it becomes policy. We then, from where we sit as ANC, we have got freedom of expression, so people can raise issues, raise their views. At a certain point, they need to know that this is now policy, so even if you say anything, you must know what the policy is. Then, sometimes in the course of the debate, there are some who begin to feel that that it makes them uncertain simply because they probably are not aware of how the policy processes evolve. Sometimes you would get ministers that would go public in debate and have different views on an issue, and that of course creates a little bit of a challenge because there is government, it's a bit more formal.
Now, it comes down to people understanding where policy comes from. ANC is the governing party. It's got 62% of the last national vote. It decides within its structures what policy should be. Does it then instruct government what to do, or do government ministers, in their wisdom, because they've been put in positions of authority, are they simply rubber stampers of ANC policy, or do they get to have a say in this?
No, not at all. What normally would happen, there's an ANC policy which is carried in the form of resolutions of ANC conference. These are the things that need to be done. But as that gives the mandate to the ministers, the president, and everyone who is the political representatives who are in government to go and then execute those decisions. But often what happens inside government is that there are certain considerations that have to be taken into account. The public will express their views, there will be certain constraints. Let me take a simple issue, or maybe not a simple issue, a straightforward matter of a decision of the ANC to have free, compulsory, universal education. It's a decision that the ANC has taken every year. But when you get to government, you found, for example, that there was a time where the resources that are available are not such that you can implement it immediately. The gaps between the very poor and the very rich means that maybe whilst the government is helping the poor, the rich should be able to carry their own financing of the education. And so you have a process that whilst the policy exists, it takes over a while to get it implemented because of the various changes. There are instances where you would call for public comments and the public will raise issues, various stakeholders will raise issues that would make the ministers, the government, the cabinet, not to implement as originally envisaged. And so that is what
but isn't that what creates the confusion? Because you've got a political party that doesn't have the burden of governance on it. It's got government, which carries the burden of governance, and the ministers who have to live with the consequences. Malusi Gigabo, for example, with the visa issue, he pushed forward what was policy, implemented policy, and then it had to be unraveled once again. And it's that sort of uncertainty which gets media, people like myself, going, hold on a second, where do we stand here? Isn't that where there is this great big divide on policy?
No, I wouldn't say it's a great big divide. You see, there's no government that goes to run elections and wins on the basis of an election manifesto. It's a political party. But between the political party and the government of the day, there is a mandate, but also there are certain practical implementation considerations that will mean that whatever the policy was is not necessarily implemented in the same way.
But it comes down to a line between state and party.
Exactly. There is a line.
Where is that line?
The line is very clear. And the line is that when you are in the party, your approach is actually determined by party political considerations and decisions that are made. Except in the case of the ANC, we normally do decisions are done on the basis of what would be for the benefit of all the people. But once you are in government, you are not going to every day be phoning your party political leadership and saying,
I bet Gweda's on the phone to every minister every day.
They're making it to be too much of an issue. I think the opposition wanted something to, make a lot of noise about, and so they picked on him. Actually, no minister is sitting there every day. Even the ANC sometimes would sit there and be surprised, oh, what happened? And then sit down and say, can we talk about it? What happened here? Because the government is a government, and therefore it's got a very independent...
But isn't it the job of government to govern within the constraints of the reality with which it deals? The finance minister, for example, in the budget was saying every policy that is going to have an economic impact needs to be tested before it is implemented into the future. So we don't have a visa regulations mess as we did, where there is a negative consequence on tourism as a result of trying to tighten up our borders. There's got to be a happy medium. But if you've got policy being made in a political party, ambitious political policy being made, and government trying to implement policy which is not necessarily practical, isn't that where the confusion comes in?
No, it doesn't work like that. Every party has got its own views. And what government will do is what is best within the resources and best for the country, with the guidance of what came from the party with the mandate that it gave.
But isn't that where the confusion comes in?
No, there's no confusion. Everywhere, in every country, that's exactly how it happens. And the reality is that government has to keep in mind what the party would have put as a policy or a mandate, and then go and deal with the practical implications thereof. So you can sit there and find that when in government, there are lots of things that have to be taken into account. It could have come from different parties, it could have come from different sectors. That becomes a practical way of dealing with it. But there is no direct, line that says you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do this, you can't do that. But there's a broad direction that really is given.
It creates the impression from the outside of infighting within an organization.
No, I think, for the media, it's always nice to pick up the juicy bits on anything. In this case, the ANC believes in an open debate. So you must be able to express your views. And if you can express your views, that's what we call democracy. You can't be suppressed. But if you differ with anybody, it's fine to raise those issues where you differ, but you must be able to make a distinction between personal views and a policy position that's been decided.
And what makes it more complicated, I suppose, is the tripartite alliance, which Kgalema Motlanthe says is dead. Gwede Mantashe disagrees. There's been that spat through the media.
Many of us disagree with him.
You disagree with Kgalema Motlanthe?
Of course.
Okay. Yeah. But doesn't that make policy making that much more difficult? Because the ANC in itself has got lots of very different members of the ANC, got lots of very different views. You've got the centre of the ANC, you've got people in the left, and you've got people slightly toward the right of the ANC. Then you've got members of the trade union movement, which are perhaps further to the left, and members of the South African Communist Party,
that's the beauty.
Further to the left.
That's the beauty.
But that debate can, in public debate certainly, can be unsettling to people looking in from the outside and going, hold on a second, these guys don't have a cohesive view of a future.
No, but you see, that's the beauty of having the ANC and its alliance. Because within that alliance, all the views will be expressed before a decision is taken, which basically is helpful because you have got, we call it a multi-class, and we call it a broad church. Effectively, it takes views from all sorts of different directions, strata, and classes, and groups, as it were. And once that discussion has been distilled, it then takes you into a particular decision that goes forward. I must also say that the issue of policy uncertainty is not really, for me, an issue that should be such that everybody should be hanging government about. There are issues which you can debate. There are issues that you take action on. But in this case, there is a program that has been put in place, a national development plan. That plan is there. Every manner of comments have been made about it. But the truth of the matter is that that's the direction that the country is supposed to follow. There will always be debate, but there's a broad thrust of where the country should be going. And public sector, private sector, trade, labor, everyone has had a part in it.
Trevor Manuel always made the point that this was a it wasn't a blueprint, it was a map, it was a roadmap, perhaps to a guide.
It's a guide.
However, all of the debate seems to, again, take impetus away from implementation.
That's because in South Africa, what makes news is negative. What makes news is controversy. When 90 people are agreed, the news will be about one who disagrees, and that's what has happened.
Okay, give me a sense then of where we are with the National Development Plan. What has been achieved? The National Development Plan is what, 5 years old now?
Well,
what's been achieved? What tangible has been achieved?
Well, let me just say that, firstly, to think that you're going to find achievement on a plan that is supposed to guide us for 20 years till 2030, I think is a little.
But you've got to make progress on the roadmap.
There's progress.
You've got to leave point A to get to point B.
What are the things that government was supposed to deal with? One of them was to put was the infrastructure build program. And that has gone on. It's going on, and every day you talk about it, we hear about it.
Where's the tangible evidence of it?
The tangible evidence, you have actually seen trains being delivered. You've concentrated on some of the challenges with them. You've got roads, you've got dams that are being built. You've got, the over the past 5 years, probably close to 800 billion has been spent on the thing. New trains have been brought up, and so on. So infrastructure is, something is going there. You've got electricity, Betupi-Kusile is going on. Yes, it was delayed, but it's going on. It's there. In fact, if you look at those particular issues, these are the things that are going to be important to pick up the economy of the country as we go forward. There's a whole lot of plans.
We're losing jobs. We've got growth at best of 1.5% this year. Is the plan adequate for South Africa's needs?
Well, firstly, when we deal with a problem like that, we need to understand that the whole world is losing jobs. China is having challenges. Only the US now is recovering. In the past few years, they're the one who dragged us down. And so Europe is picking up a little bit, but you could get more in returns if you invest in Africa than in Europe. And so now China's kind of turned around. So South Africa can't be an island. So we are losing jobs because there are issues which are part of the global global economy.
Issues.
There are domestic issues, yes, but I'm saying that there is a hope for South Africa, but what we must not do is to, each time the country gets into a problem, we must not start shooting at each other to say, well, look at us, we're now going for an apocalypse. It's not going to be like that. What we need is that everybody needs to say, there are things that are not going well, there are things that are going well. Those which are going well is where we need to concentrate and focus. Let me give you an example.
We have to cut it. So one last example, and then we're going to finish.
Well, we've just had one study that was done by McKinsey that was identifying areas where private sector and public sector on 5 areas can actually make a growth of 5%. Infrastructure, they've raised, oil and gas, they've raised, agriculture, agri-processing, services sector.
The Deputy President this week, I'm going to be in trouble with my producers, but sure. I don't care. The Deputy President this week was saying, business, please come and tell us your problems.
Of course.
Business sits in a trench, doesn't want to raise its head above a trench because it's frightened of dealing with government.
No, they shouldn't be frightened.
What sort of hope can you give business?
Everyone must know that the economy of this country is in the hands of both public sector and private sector largely, and labor, and therefore unless we all sit together and discuss, one thing that affects one sector will inevitably affect the entire country unless everybody comes together and work.
How do we come together practically?
Practically, the business need to actually meet with government to say, here's our plan.
And when?
All right.
Set a date. Hire a venue. Business will even pay for the venue, I bet you.
Yeah, well, I will not set the date, but if we can assist and facilitate, we are there. But government is in union building. All we need is we can just take a delegation of those private sector members to go and meet up with government. President is easy to reach. But on the issue, I was giving an example on the McKinsey report. All we need is that those people who are in the sectors that I mentioned, industrial manufacturing, etc., they just need to meet with those ministers and say, guys, we've got a plan. We need your assistance here. Let's start moving.
And then do the government ministers need to call the ANC saying it's okay for us to meet with
We've
business?
already said so.
Okay.
ANC is ready. If there's a public sector and private sector collaboration, the ANC has already blessed it.
Zweli Mkhize, thanks so much for coming in. I'm in trouble with my producer, and sorry for keeping you this evening from the next show. That was the African National Congress Treasurer General Zweli Mkhize with fascinating views into the inner workings of policy making in South Africa and the invitation to business to man up, if that's not too sexist, and have a conversation. There will be more ways to bring private and sector government together tomorrow. If we can just get business organizations to talk to each other, perhaps that could happen. Right now, good night.